La diffusion vient de démarrer. Tous les participants sont en mode écoute seul.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this webinar of the International Fleet Managers Institute, the IFMI. The webinar today will tackle an important forward-looking subject: how to adapt your LCV fleet management to the last mile context. My name is Steven Schroefs. I'm the Editor-in-Chief of Fleet Europe and Global Fleet, and I have the pleasure to be your moderator of today. This webinar is organized for informative purposes only, and so it's not allowed to copy-paste information of the presentations that you will see during the webinar. Today I am luckily not alone to discuss the topic of LCV fleet management in the last mile context. We have for you 4 experts that will detail the complexity, the opportunities, and the issues related to last mile mobility and the way you as a fleet and mobility manager need to organize your vehicle fleet management and your light commercial vehicle fleet. And so the speakers of today are Mark Lovett of LeasePlan, Mark Cartwright of FTA, Jean Mateos of Arval, and Nicolas Michel of Arval. They are going to assist you throughout the webinar with their expertise. Our first expert speaker is Nicolas Michel. He is Senior Consultant at Business Mobility and Leasing Company Arval, and he is going to put a context around the last mile topic. If everything is fine, I should now hear Nicolas in this webinar room. Nicolas, are you there?
Yes, Steven, I'm there. Thank you very much. And good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you to attend to this seminar. So, as an introduction or contextualization, I will try in 6 slides and a few minutes to describe as best as I can the major automotive mobility and leasing market trends, and also for sure the landscape around LCV and the last mile issue. On the first slide, just to quickly introduce 2 short definitions to specify a little bit the frame. First of all, the LCV, which stands for, as you know, for light commercial vehicles, including small, medium, large vans, but also pickup and transporter, are out of this scope, LCV definition, the trucks, whatever they are, light or heavy, and complex equipped vehicles. Secondly, the last mile or the last mile delivery, called LMD as a concept, are the words used to describe all around the issues for accessing to downtown center, delivering goods, services, and people in the context of the city initiatives, which are changing their regulations to restrict the accesses of their center, talking more and more care about quality issues, but also other pollutants such as noise. We talk about micro delivery also when we mention the last mile or the last mile delivery concept. On the next slide, as one of the current mega trends, we can mention for sure the global warming, since right now more than 15 years. And nowadays, on top of this global warming is coming the air quality issue, particularly in big cities. These environmental issues have different statements in the world. In the European area, it's really a major concern, while in Africa, Americas, or Eastern countries, it seems that they have other priorities, not saying that these areas are not concerned by these environmental issues, but Europe is really proacting while others are more reacting. The third and maybe the fourth industrial revolution, as another trend, has started with the internet. As you know, thanks to the web also comes the sharing economy with the power grid and so on. And nowadays it's actually coming the area of the artificial intelligence with the autonomous car in our automotive and leasing industry. A third major trend is for sure the energy transition, which is a global issue impacting all industry sectors, from energy extraction through transformation, storage to transportation industry, which is, as a final consumer, only a small piece of this global puzzle of the energy transition. The transportation sector is really concerned by this energy transition, and it's very often highlighted and accused also by the media to be one of the main responsible of the air pollution and the global warming. In the context of the energy transition, cities are reacting through their mayor, taking initiative to restrict more and more the access to their downtown center. It exists today three kinds of restrictions: the low emission zone, the urban road tolls, and the key access regulations. Fortunately, a European website proposed a live inventory of such regulations, so you can go directly to this website, which is urbanaccessregulation.eu. That's the first one. And on the same topic, the 14.org website provides you also a very good overview of the major cities' initiative to fight against these transportation congestions. Another trend that everybody is aware now is WLTP. This worldwide harmonized light vehicles test procedures provides since September 2018 for passenger cars and in September 2019 for LCV, new, more accurate values regarding fuel consumptions and pollutants emissions such as CO2 and NOx. This will affect your fleet TCO in the countries where the vehicle's taxation is based on CO2 values. On top of this procedure, you have to know that the European Union has also fixed a 2020 CO2 target, the famous 95 grams per kilometer. And to reach that target and avoiding as much as they can the huge penalties determined by the European Commission, the OEMs have to improve significantly their engine technology to reduce the pollutant emissions, but overall, they have to diverse their vehicles' energy mix. As the penalties will be determined on the average of the vehicle delivered in 2020 CO2 emissions, the OEMs have to increase the proportion of green cars deliveries, namely EVs, HEVs, which propose the lowest emission ratio today. For this main reason, the OEMs offer range on EVs and HEVs is increasing actually significantly. Unfortunately, more focused today on passenger cars and not as much on LCVs. Talking about this OEM electrification strategy and in the context of the global diesel bashing, we clearly also observe that TCO for leased vehicle is changing. And that's true not only for passenger cars, but also for LCVs. Diesel cars was in the past most often the best choice from a vehicle TCO point of view. This statement is changing mainly due to the remarketing changes, the second-hand market, seeing diesel car values decreasing significantly while petrol, gas, and EV and HEV reselling price is actually increasing. As a consequence, and more often nowadays, we see that non-diesel cars are becoming progressively more and more competitive from a TCO perspective. Because of this diversification of the OEM offer range and new engine technologies, choosing the right car for the right usage is more and more complex than ever. Nowadays, it becomes crucial to better understand the usage of the car to select the right vehicles to the right energy. And to better assess and monitor this usage and needs, the data age is welcome. Talking about data, we have to mention the GDPR, which is also clearly an actual trend, standing for General Data Protection Regulation. And these have to be perceived not as a constraint, but as an opportunity. It's an opportunity clearly for better communication on companies' data usage, making things clearest for the drivers, including the LCV drivers. This will clearly support, I think, the development of telematics as a service, and we will talk about that later on in the webinar, where drivers will be able to identify also their advantages with such a service, and not only companies. Mentioning telematics, I must have one word about digitalization, which is a collateral of the data age, and is for sure one of the 21st century trends, and the 5G technology will support clearly that trend. Getting and analyzing more and more data will contribute for sure to a better understanding of the LCV usage, and as a consequence will help to select the most relevant mobility services. Last but not least, and talking about mobility services, we achieve this contextualization and market section with a mobility as a service concept. We will talk about this concept more in detail in another webinar later on in this year. But this is clearly a trend appeared 2 or 3 years ago. The concept to understand is really simple. And MaaS is the integration of various forms of transport services into a single mobility services accessible on demand. We clearly observe the appearance of many new mobility forms. One tangible example is, for example, the scooter sharing in the major city, but also ride sharing, facilitated by the new mobile apps to connect people to each other and to manage also financial transactions between the chauffeur and his passenger. For LCVs, this MaaS trend, there is less solutions emerging over the market, but we will see in this webinar later on with Jean the statement around this LCV solution for the last mile. You have also to know that MaaS as an association, it's a MaaS alliance with numerous members acting in various industrial sectors, such as city organization, universities, leasing company, and so on. It's a non-profit organization do some lobbying to change the state of mind of the people of industries regarding mobility. It campaigns for the reduction of the vehicles as a means of transportation, promoting other mobility ways such as ride sharing, as I already mentioned, public transportation, biking, scootering, etc., etc. This new age of mobility brings some new business models around transportation and the last mile delivery issue, and in the same time, so a lot of newcomers and actors on this not yet well-structured market is coming. As a consequence, and still today, as this MaaS market is not well-structured and organized yet, the new mobility solutions are really diversified and must be considered not at European or country level, but really at city level. In a nutshell, and to conclude on this introduction, all these facts reshuffle clearly the cards of the fleet management, and in particular the LCV fleet management. A lot of opportunities are ahead from us, and this gives me the opportunity to introduce my LeasePlan colleague who will present you right now one of the solutions for the last mile, the e-LCV. So, dear Mark, right now the floor is yours, my friend.
Hello, Mark Lovett. If you're in the room, yes.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Nicolas. Good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Mark Lovett, and I'm Head of Commercial Vehicles at LeasePlan Corporation. And I'm going to spend just a few minutes this afternoon talking about the LeasePlan view of electric LCVs and the impact of them on LCV fleet operators. So why should you include e-LCVs on your fleet? The answer is because of air quality targets. In a recent response to a report on electric vehicles and the environment, it was reported that governments across Europe want to see new cars and vans delivering as many zero-emission miles as possible and as fast as possible, starting today. And that's what this webinar is all about. It's about getting started. So the goals are, by 2030, at least 50% of new car sales are to be ultra-low emission, and up to 40% of new van or LCV sales are to be ultra-low emission. Now, with 2040 being all new cars and vans to zero emissions, that's only in around 5 vehicle life cycles, so not that far away. The reason for this increase in electric vehicle registrations is down to a number of elements: environmental consciousness, or even conscience, the charging infrastructure, and of course the vehicles themselves. The technology powering e-LCVs has improved dramatically over the past 5 years. Most new electric LCVs have an official range of around 160 kilometers. And recently this has been increasing, with some now around 170 kilometers or more. But as we know, the claims have often been higher than reality. So it should be noted that this can vary on the road, depending largely on payload or even the climatic conditions. The cold affects battery performance, so the experienced range in reality could be as little as 100 kilometers. And as fleet operators, you have to ask yourselves, is that enough? Further improvements are in the pipeline, and mid to large size e-LCVs such as the Mercedes e-Vito and e-Sprinter are coming onto the market soon. And what we are seeing is that there is little or no compromise on storage space, and payloads are improving. Next slide, please. Thank you. To be honest, the world, and in particular the Chinese, is very focused on this market and waking up to the reality of electric vehicles. As you can see from this graph that shows the production forecast of manufacturers for electric vehicles, there are many new entrants that are coming into the market. This next slide shows the images of the main electric LCVs that are currently available in the market today. And there is already, therefore, some reasonable choice dependent on what you need your vehicle to do for your business. How many of these e-LCVs are you seeing out on the road? Perhaps not as many as we should. So, when we are thinking about the cost of life costs, when it comes to their list price, e-LCVs tend to cost more than equivalent diesel or petrol models. For example, the non-electric Nissan NV200 starts at around €17,000, whereas the eNV200 starts at a little over €21,000. The Business Energy and Industrial Strategy report suggests that by mid-2020s, cost parity should be achieved. That's not that far away. However, an e-LCV will save money in other ways over the course of its working life. Electricity isn't subject to fuel duty. It can cost around €3 per 160 kilometers, which is about a quarter of the cost of diesel. As they have fewer moving parts, electric vehicles generally have lower maintenance costs than traditional vehicles, and they take less time to maintain. In addition, e-LCVs also benefit from a number of government policies designed to encourage the uptake of cleaner vehicles. We hear a lot from our customers about their concerns around e-LCVs. These include questions such as, how do we know if moving to EV is the right choice for our business? The charging infrastructure is a concern. Payload is a problem for EVs. They're too expensive. What are the most important changes to make as a business to start the progress of switching to electric? Range anxiety is an issue. How do I convince our board to change their policy? The technology is moving at such a fast pace, and we don't want to take the risk. The LeasePlan question is more of a statement. It's not about if, it's about when. For LeasePlan, it's clear that e-LCVs are the future, and we are committed to facilitate a smooth transition towards electric driving for our clients and drivers. However, we have talked today about the barriers and the misconceptions that need to be overcome. In most cases, they are indeed merely misconceptions, not barriers. Thank you for listening, and now I'm going to hand over to Jean Mateos from Arval to talk about last mile delivery. Jean.
Thank you, Stephen and Mark.
Jean.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Stephen. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Mark. Good afternoon, everyone. Let's start by a short video, which is about Amazon. Okay, so was it the future? Maybe, perhaps, we don't know. But back on Earth, on focus on existing solutions.
On this slide, we have to bear in mind that the process at customer must lead to the tool. Until recently, it was quite the contrary. Companies had to adapt their processes to what the OEMs were able to provide. The reflection on a strong TCO optimization plus CSR strategies have led to the usage of new technologies, the creation of startups, the creation of new types of moving in the city centers. Moreover, companies are now driven by the usage and nothing but the usage when they want to design their ideal fleet of LCVs. Until recently, the fleet was composed by a van, a small, a medium, a large van, with or without any equipment. But now, what about an e-bike, an e-scooter, an e-tricycle, a tiny e-van? On the next page now, we have, Stephen, on next page, please. Thank you. On the left, we have the Easy Pro by Renault. On the right, we have the Urbanetic by Daimler. With these two concepts, we enter the world of full autonomous vehicles. With Easy Pro, the main revolution imagined by this is the possibility to ride in convoy. Cabin-equipped vehicle acts as a pilot fish and can be followed by other modules, completely autonomous and without cab. They can deliver at home quite right away what has been ordered from the internet site after visiting the showroom of Zara, the showroom of IKEA, or even Tesco. With Urbanetic by Daimler, we have here an autonomous chassis. As a van pool vehicle, the Urbanetic can accommodate up to 12 passengers. When used in cargo mode, its cargo area has 10 cubic meters and can store up to 10 pallets. The change of modules can be done automatically in a few minutes or even manually. In the next page, other solutions are not only based on wheels. We can remember that the purpose of the last mile delivery is to reduce the share of it. Bear in mind that the cost of the last mile delivery is 28% of the whole distribution process. This is where the startups and the apps can bring them bunch of creativity. What about a private runner who could be faster than a vehicle or even a bike in some very specific city centers? What about a drone which could deliver the right spare part at the right moment to the right technician or worker, delivering living human organs via drone? On the next page, we can see that real and efficient solutions already exist. More and more actors and players are investigating in this market, whether they are big, mid, or small players. They are located on the 5 continents. A myriad of local solutions at city level are live, and few could be useful for the last mile delivery purpose, but most of them today are dedicated to people mobility services. When we see all these actors, small or large actors, we can say that this market is not mature. Not mature means that the number of startups and apps will grow continuously. In the next slide, we could say that in some industries, the revolution has already started in some companies, and some companies are already moving and reinventing their delivery processes. The aim is to set the fastest way between the order of the customer on the internet and the order and the delivery of the aim is to set the fastest way between the order of the customer on the internet or the order of the customer in the mall and the proper delivery of the clothes or shoes at home. The need of the customer today is more about hours than days. We have the example of IKEA, which has set a new business in the very center of Paris. No stock in Paris, of course, because of the cost of the square meter, but a very strong last mile delivery process to make happy the customers. In my final slide, the purpose of these two pictures is absolutely the same. Serve the process, which is deliver goods to the final customer. In a nutshell, until recently, one vehicle, mainly with 4 wheels, sometimes with a horse, was able to cope with the whole process from the plant to the very city center. Tomorrow, the whole process will be adapted to each industry with new types of vehicle, with new technologies. The last mile delivery process is the best way to solve the following equation: satisfaction of your customer, P&L of your company, and your CSR strategy. I let now the floor to Mark from LeasePlan, who will present to you how to improve LCV fleet efficiency. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Jean. And now we are going to listen to an exciting presentation of how you can create light commercial vehicle efficiency. We have 2 Marks in this webinar room. Gentlemen, it's up to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Jean. So, Mark 1, I'm now going to talk a little bit about LCV efficiency. Well, let's start with the opposite to efficiency and ask ourselves, what is inefficiency? When we talk with van operators or LCV operators about fleet efficiency, we're mostly talking about inefficiency. That is downtime, or time when the vehicle is not productive and generating revenue. Now, this can often be caused by technical failure, routine maintenance, or damage, meaning, of course, that the vehicle is not working or is otherwise inactive. Broadly speaking, this comes in 2 forms. Number 1, unplanned downtime. This is when the downtime is unexpected, such as when a vehicle breaks down or is involved in an accident. And number 2 is planned downtime. This is when the downtime is expected, such as when a vehicle is booked in for servicing or repair. In either case, properly managing this time can improve your fleet's efficiency. So, what's the impact of inefficiency? In a survey last year, UK fleet decision makers were asked, what's the biggest challenge that your business faces? The top 2 answers were reducing costs and managing vehicle downtime. Now, these 2 answers are interlinked. Downtime imposes significant financial costs on a business. Not only is there the cost of lost business, as a vehicle that would otherwise be working sits idle, but there can also be extra costs, such as repair bills and replacement staff, not to mention reputational damage and health and safety risk. So if we look on the next slide, we can see that there are some previous examples that we've talked about in terms of the planned and the unplanned downtime, but we found that broader research has found that the average cost of downtime varies wildly, as does people's perception of the cost. In articles written a couple of years ago, the FTA, or the Freight Transport Association, and you'll hear from Mark 2 in a moment, they cited that the span of the cost of VOR, or vehicle off-road time, was considerable. Some commentators suggesting the equivalent of between 800 to 1,200 euros per vehicle per day is what downtime costs. Some companies even citing as much as 3,000 to 4,000 euros. Whatever the amount, what we do all agree on is that if a single van is out of action for an extended period, it could leave a significant dent in a fleet's budget. There is a saying, if we always do what we have always done, we will always get what we have always got. At the end of a vehicle's contract or life, if we just order another one of the same, we may be giving ourselves a problem with inefficiency down the road. It's important to consider what has changed and what will be changing, both within our own business and what is coming over the horizon. It's not always easy to get our eyes up to the horizon when we are all up to our neck in our day job. But we need to be mindful of whether our vehicle is fit for purpose, and it's about maximizing your vehicle's efficiency through the right vehicle for the right job. As I said earlier on, Mark Cartwright from the UK's FTA Van Excellence will now link LCV's fleet inefficiency to safety. Mark, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mark. Mark 2 here. Quick introduction, really. Freight Transport Association is the UK's largest transport-related trade association. You may have heard of us. We have around 17,000 member organisations who between them operate around about half of the UK's truck fleet and somewhere in the region of 1 million vans on UK roads. The reason that we got involved with what became Van Excellence was our van operating member companies told us that they wanted to develop, with our support, a strong and practical standard of operation. They understood they had a corporate responsibility to operate in a safe, compliant and efficient manner and wanted to be able to demonstrate this. They also wanted to protect the level of flexibility that they enjoyed in the operation of running their vans and were looking for a way to evidence this to hold off any government moves. And as you appreciate, we have a few issues with our government at the moment to impose truck-like legislation on van operating sectors. We spent a lot of time working with those operators and indeed providers such as our friends at LeasePlan and Arval to understand what good looked like. Sorry, next slide, please, Stephen. To understand what good looked like in terms of van operational standards. We developed a voluntary code with these operators, which became known as the Van Excellence Code. The code looks at operational standards for both drivers and vehicles, and these standards and requirements are all very appropriate and very proportional to the kind of operations that we work with. In a nutshell, Van Excellence is all about operators sharing best practice, not just around risk and compliance, but also around efficient operational practices, the adoption of new operational practices, and indeed, in keeping with today's theme, new technologies. Van Excellence is all about confidence. It's all about the operator having a confidence that they are meeting best-in-class standards for risk, compliance, and efficiency, and for other road users and other stakeholders also having a confidence that these operators are responsible and they can have a confidence in the way that they're operating. The reason we're delighted to have the opportunity to quickly present to you this afternoon as part of this webinar is our view, as shared by our colleagues at LeasePlan, is that this practice, this process is entirely transferable. It was developed in the UK, but it's by no means bound to the UK. Our view is a similar process, a similar way of working would transfer across into other nations and indeed of other jurisdictions. So thank you for your attention. I'll now hand back to Mark 1.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you very much indeed. So if we just have a look at the next slide, where we're coming back to this idea that we can manage and improve the efficiency of our van fleets, our LCV fleets, by reducing downtime, we need to be considering vehicle checks. Vehicle checks should be thorough, and they should include all of the items that you see on the slide. We also recommend that some sort of guide is used. Walk-around checks aren't just a job for the employees or the drivers of the LCVs, and these are very much elements that are akin to the truck and heavy goods vehicle world that Mark Cartwright was just alluding to. Employers must also ensure that LCV drivers have both the training and the time to perform these vital vehicle checks. Crucially, a process needs to be in place that drivers can easily report any defects that they find on their vehicle and that they are acted upon. Making that process digital rather than paper-based could also help to speed things up for drivers and to enable organizations to extract valuable insights from the data. Let's not forget maintenance. Daily vehicle checks allow proactive approaches to both routine maintenance and defects, without them becoming a problem that would cause unplanned downtime, which we've already seen is inefficient and will cost you as fleet and LCV operators money. Prevention is always better than cure, and any defects identified on a vehicle should be fixed as soon as possible before they become a problem. We suggest, in order to minimize any disruptions from maintenance, that the downtime should be planned and scheduled well in advance. Arrange for your vehicles to be off the road when it causes least disruption to your business, and consider whether you can use twilight or out of hours servicing, and also consider the option of mobile servicing. Finally, let's not forget to embrace digital tools. My last slide now shows you the type of digital tools that are available to support the efficient operation of an LCV fleet. Fleet software is widely available nowadays, and utilizing these digital tools can be a really effective way of capturing data and turning it into actionable insights to improve your LCV fleet's efficiency. A suite of reports for the tools listed on the slide is often available, allowing you to benefit from the insights that you need when you need them. So I thank you once again for listening to my presentation on LCV fleet efficiency and the earlier presentation on electric LCVs. And I will now hand back to our moderator, Stephen. Thank you.
Mark, thank you. Thank you very much. Mark Lovett, also Mark Cartwright, Jean Mateos, and Nicolas Michel. We have now arrived to the final part of this webinar of the IFMI on last mile mobility and LCV management. We will now have the Q&A session with our experts, and for that Q&A session, it's easy, it's straightforward. You just have to send your question within the questions box of the webinar tool. Please address it to a certain speaker, and then I will moderate this Q&A. So you can send your question using the function of the questions in the webinar tool. Mark Lovett of LeasePlan, the first question for you. You talked about inefficiency. You talked about efficiency. Do you have the impression, as the head of LCV at LeasePlan, that most fleet and mobility managers are managing their LCV fleet in an efficient way?
That's a really good question. I think that there are LCV fleet managers that do their very best to manage their fleet of LCVs in the most efficient way that they can. I think the problem with keeping an LCV fleet efficiently managed is very much down to the amount of time that one as a fleet manager can spend on that. Unfortunately, particularly in the UK, and I'm sure it's the same in other European countries, we have seen through companies having to reduce their overhead costs, we have seen large fleet departments that used to exist in large fleet operators slowly decline. And we have seen that the responsibility for managing an LCV fleet has recently become something that's been the responsibility of an HR department or a procurement department or a finance department. And the problem with that is that although it may save cost in the short term, in terms of you don't have the overhead costs of a full-time fleet department, you don't have the expertise and you don't have the knowledge that is required that the fleet managers have in terms of knowing best practice. So my view is that I think everybody genuinely does their very best to operate an efficient fleet, but sometimes you need to be steered and guided and be open to advice from fleet management experts to make sure that you're doing everything that you can to operate an efficient LCV fleet.
Okay, a question for Mark Cartwright. Mark, you are, let's say, representing a large association of LCVs, trucks and commercial vehicles. The question is straightforward. How do you see within your association the uptake of e-LCVs, also a topic that we discussed in this webinar?
I tend to agree with Mark Lovett. Mark, one is operators are starting to look increasingly at e-LCVs as a more viable option from a cost point of view here in the UK than they ever have done previously. I think that's certainly a function of the OEMs presenting some better packages in terms of vehicles, more cost-effective packages, and as Mark spoke, as we're seeing the price parity approaching quickly. I think the other piece that's coming into that is where an e-LCV fits the role well in the UK, it fits it exceptionally well and demonstrates a very quick and very strong return on investment. And I think it's an understanding from operators as to where those best fits are, which is increasing the momentum towards e-LCV adoption.
Okay, another question for you. If we are talking about last mile mobility, e-LCVs, let's say creating efficiency into your commercial transport, how do you look at the essence and importance of education when it comes to driver behavior training?
Well, I mean, Mark 1 has heard me say this many times, is it is fundamentally all about the driver. At the end of the day, a vehicle doesn't particularly contribute to your efficiency, doesn't particularly contribute to your safety and your risk management without a driver sat behind the wheel of it. Certainly in terms of e-LCVs, we're seeing great acceptance amongst drivers when they understand the benefits and any of their anxieties about about range anxiety and all the rest of it are met. But in terms of efficient and safe performance, it's very much about operators engaging with and empowering their drivers to make the right kind of decisions.
Okay, we are coming now to Jean Mateos, head of LCV at Arval. Jean, you talked a little bit about everything that has to do, let's say, with the evolution in autonomous vehicles. In what way will that facilitate and make, let's say, urban mobility and last mile mobility more efficient for fleet and mobility customers?
In fact, thank you for the question, Stephen. In fact, in the city centers, if we imagine that we have only autonomous vehicles, so we could imagine a high fluidity of traffic in the street of the city. So if we have a high fluidity, we can increase the number of vehicles in the city. So if you increase the number of vehicles in the city, autonomous vehicle in the city, so you increase, of course, the quality of delivery to the final customers.
Okay. A question for Nicolas. Michel. Nicolas, you talked about the context of last mile and urban mobility. Well, one of the things I can imagine, and perhaps after your comment we can ask Mark Cartwright about it. One of the things that I can imagine is a struggle for, let's say, efficient planning, long-term vision in terms of last mile mobility is the continuous changes in regulation, taxation, etc. Different cities, different legislations. How do you think that fleet and mobility managers with LCVs and having to take goods, people into the city centers today and tomorrow, what is your opinion? What are your tips for them, let's say, in terms of being each time at the forefront, a step ahead of what is popping up?
You're absolutely right. We can imagine many different scenarios. We don't have a crystal ball to guess what will be the real future in this. As we said, it's very actually unstructured market. Fortunately, it existing different solution, which is actually available everywhere and particularly in Europe. But having a clear view of what kind of scenario will impose from another, it's really today just impossible. In terms of tips and advice that we can push right now, and maybe Marshall will complete also my answer, is really to consider this at city level, just thanks to website, which is actually describing and giving you many solutions, which is already existing, but also considering city per city, the constraints and the regulation, which is, let's say, moving day after day. It's really changes which is ongoing actually. But well, apart of that, I can't really define or design any scenario or solution that will come up from one to another one. Mm-hmm. But really consider at city level the solutions and the actors who are available providing solutions today. Maybe it won't be the solution of tomorrow, but already actually we have solutions, and it's possible effectively to change the process, to reconsider the way to deliver and to access to this downtown center and all around this last mile issue. That's the good news of the day. What will be the future and tomorrow? Honestly, I don't know.
Okay, thank you. And then Mark Cartwright, how are you going within your association dealing with that ever-changing legislation and that regulation, also in terms of urban access, urban mobility, and so on?
It's a massive challenge, to be honest. Certainly, even just within the UK, all we ask both national and local legislators for is to give our industry time to plan, time to develop solutions to meet their requirements around air quality, for example. It's an ongoing issue. Our industries are able to react. Our industries are very responsible and keen to react properly to these kind of challenges. But as long as we have time to plan, as long as those approaches are consistent already in the UK, our national operators are operating to different standards, for example, to meet requirements in London, as they are in, for example, Birmingham, mm-hmm. Manchester and Edinburgh. It's a real challenge, and all we can do is really appeal and make our case to the legislators, the actors, both centrally and locally, that our industry is a responsible industry, but you need to involve us in the conversations and the solutions and give our industry time to react to them.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Going to the other Mark, question for you. Mark, what is the biggest factor preventing a faster adoption of e-LCVs and last mile mobility solutions in the next 5 years? Is it price? Is it charging infrastructure? Is it range? Is it the pace of technology, change in batteries, alternatives like drones and so on that we have seen that are popping up? What is for you the element that could prevent the faster adoption?
Excuse me. Thank you for the question. I actually think there's an element of all of those characteristics that are impacting on the pace of adoption of e-LCV. One of them that you didn't call out there that I do genuinely believe is an important one and a critical one is that of the availability of e-LCV from our manufacturer partners in terms of scale. So I put on one of my slides earlier on, you saw something like half a dozen e-LCVs available on the market today. However, if you have 10 very large fleet operators that wanted, hundreds and hundreds each of those vehicles with immediate delivery or delivery within the next 2 to 3 months, as would be possible with a traditional diesel engine vehicle, there would be a problem. And therefore, it's not possible, it's not practical for fleets to switch their LCVs from a traditionally fueled model into an electric fleet application, just purely because the availability of vehicles is not there yet. However, over the next 5 years, which I think is what your question was really focusing on, we will see an improvement in that. The OEMs are already stating that they will be ramping up production of their vehicles, but we need to see it, and we need to see volume of e-LCVs. And the other one is probably it's the charging infrastructure. Some countries are more advanced than others, but I think that in a lot of countries, it's about having real peace of mind for an LCV fleet operator that they will have no delay or no impact on downtime of their vehicles in order to to take up the opportunity for when are these vehicles going to be charged. Are they going to be charged when they're back in the depot? At the end of the day, are they going to be charged at different times of the day when these vehicles are being used? Are they going to have to be charged at home locations, residential locations where drivers take the vehicle home? So my view is that we need to have a really robust infrastructure with charging, and we need to have a much more increased volume of immediately available e-LCVs from the manufacturers. Those are the two reasons that I would cite.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mark, for your expertise. Thank you also to the other experts in this IFMI webinar, Mr. Mark Cartwright, Jean Mateos, and Nicolas Michel, for your insights and answering the questions. We have come to the end of this webinar of the IFMI. Thank you very much. As you can see, there will be a recorded version that we will show in the upcoming days. We will also send you the link. There is a little satisfaction survey so that we can also improve future events. And of course, with the IFMI, the International Fleet Managers Institute, we are not at the end this year. We are organizing on the 3rd of October 2019 a new webinar, but then related to mobility as a service, and on 6th November, so the day before the Fleet Europe Awards, linked to the Fleet Europe Summit, on 6th November, we expect to meet with you in Estoril. Even in November, it will be sunny and nice, so to have a full day training session around the future of vehicle fleet management. And so we hope to meet with you in a short time. Thank you very much also to our IFMI partners for supporting us, and I hope to meet with you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.